You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots. Here's your host, Ryan Argenta.
We're back at the Engage podcast. Rich Wheeler of the Negotiating Committee and Shawn Kellett, the chairman of the Scheduling Committee. We're in the thick of it now. Section 23 scheduling. There are some major changes here. We will try to cover as much as we can. Rich, Shawn, major changes. One of the big things that we've been talking about for years has been reroute. Again, I'm going to plug Engage episode 4 and 5. They're on scheduling and fatigue, rotation construction, quality of life. Go back and listen to those and then compare to this. So let's talk reroute provisions. It's just been a constant source of frustration with the pilot group. The current language is difficult to harness and understand. We've got the optimizer working against us. Rich, kick it off. What are some wins here on reroute?
Right. So the big win and reroute, which lives under Section 23L in the working agreement, is how it treats middle of the rotation deadhead. Like any good superhero origin story, there's a little bit of backstory that you kind of need to go into with the reroutes. There's actually 3 core components of our reroute language. The first lives under 23L2. And what that does is that prohibits any rerouting before the first airborne departure. What that really is designed to do is protect the integrity of the rotation that you bid. We all bid trips in PDS. You bid it on purpose. That's the trip that you want to fly. On the back end is 23L8 and 9 for regular and reserve pilots, respectively. What this does is this protects the footprint of your rotation. If you fly a 4-day trip, you want to fly a 4-day trip. And if the company schedules you or reroutes you beyond that certain limit, depending if there's an ocean crossing or not, then they owe you some premium pay. There are some exceptions there, but generally a 23L8 and 9 is designed to overall protect the footprint of the trip. Kind of the chewy nougat in the middle of the candy bar is 23L4. It is complicated. It is difficult to track. It takes a lot of research. It is completely opaque to the pilot on how these things are handled. And so our primary goal during this negotiation was to resolve 23L4 into something that is completely transparent to the pilot.
And one of the biggest things is now every reroute is going to pay some type of premium pay. So whether it's the first day or the second day or the third day, every reroute will pay. Like Rich said, it's transparent to the pilots. Most of it, if not all of it, pilot can actually calculate what they're due for reroute pay, which right now, like Rich said, it's incredibly laborious for us to, what'd you call it? The creamy nougat in the middle.
Yes.
For people like my staff and I have been doing this for years, sometimes it can take 2 hours to determine, sorry, Ryan, you're paid correctly, which is nothing.
Yeah.
It's so clunky, for lack of better words. And this really fixes all of it.
Right. And how we've done that is we've gone to a premium pay system that is very easy to determine. And it does escalate. So on any single day of your rotation, if you are rerouted for that single day, those legs will pay a premium of single pay credit, which is how all legs are paid. But on top of that, you'll get a 50% pay and no credit. If that reroute continues on beyond a break-in duty, so there is a disincentive to reroute you past your overnight, that premium pay escalates to single pay and no credit over 50%. So once you get beyond that break-in duty, now you're going to be essentially getting 200% pay for any rerouted legs.
And let's remind our listeners, the phrase that pays is pay no credit, right? So this is above the full rotation pay treatment. If you're on reserve, this is above your guarantee. So all these things stack and add up.
This is all in addition to other forms of pay.
And I didn't mean to cut you off here, but I want to draw attention to the Negotiator's notepad. It's going to be linked to the podcast description, the episode description. It's also on the Contract 2019 webpage. It's on the ALPA webpage. On page 2 of that, there's a number of examples, and this takes our current book examples and it expands it into TA 2019. But in general, if you're rerouted in the middle of your rotation, it's a 1-leg reroute worth 2 hours, then you'll get 3 hours of pay for that leg and you return to your original rotation. End of story. That extra hour goes above the guarantee.
That's correct. Is above all other forms of pay. And just to add in there, once the company has utilized that first day that pays 150%, they only get one bite at that apple. So if they reroute you that first day, it pays 150%, and then they return you to your rotation, they've used up that opportunity. Any subsequent reroute beyond that will pay 200%.
Double. So now you're on a green slip.
That's basically it.
Okay. And again, because of pay and no credit treatment, these things stack. So you are now on a green slip to begin with. You have a 3-hour sit, you get sit pay. Now you're released at midnight 30. So you get the ADG
Cut out pay.
And then on the other day, you're rerouted. This is all compounding pay treatments.
Yeah, if you hit a holiday, you've hit all the bumpers in the pinball machine.
Right. So there's some pilots who were saying they're never going to build rotations like this again. They're too expensive. And isn't that the point?
That's the exact point. We hope that is indeed true.
Okay.
That's exactly right. We've made it so expensive that it's hopefully a distant second.
True or false? There was a significant request from pilots to change the reroute.
And it looks like you have.
Yeah, the important thing is, again, you have to go back and look at reroute holistically, all the parts of it. 23L2, which is kind of the protecting your rotation, and 23L8 and 9, which is protecting the footprint. Those are pretty well defined. They've existed in the PWA for a long time. The rules behind them are pretty well established. 23L4 has been subject to a number of changes in interpretations and grievance settlements, none of which you can really read in the contract. And so it's very difficult to follow, more difficult to implement and make sure people have been paid.
I'll just take a little bit of different approach. Obviously, the airline has to reroute, right? But what we're trying to do is protect the integrity of that rotation and your seniority. You bid and were awarded a rotation based on what you wanted and based on your seniority. Right now, I would say that most believe that's an abrogation of seniority. So we're trying to protect that. And I believe that's exactly what this does. Everybody bids a rotation for whatever reason, right? They love a certain layover, they love a certain city, they want a 30-hour layover at home for whatever reason. So we're trying to force the optimizer to maintain that as much as they can.
Okay. I don't want to jump ahead, or I do want to jump ahead actually, because voluntary airport standby, and you can answer this how you'd like, but if there is someone available in that fleet, in that base on a voluntary airport standby basis, then no pilot can be rerouted.
Right. Any pilot in that equipment, right? So if you have a 717 captain who is sitting a vast period, if he's available, there's no reason to reroute another pilot. During the time that we were researching this issue, because this is hugely complicated, our data indicates that for every pilot who gets rerouted, there are between 7 and 9 pilots who are affected downline. It causes an incredible amount of churn. And one of the things that the vast pilots do is it acts as a circuit breaker to break that chain of events. And hopefully that's going to result in a lot less drama for people.
Okay.
Yeah. If I could build on that without getting too much in the detail, what Rich says is exactly right. 7 to 9 pilots, the average for one reroute. So Ryan, you're rerouted. 7 to 9 pilots downline, their lives are getting affected for one reroute. For whatever reason that was, if the company's trying to maintain schedule integrity, operational excellence, whatever the reason is, a lot of people that are going to be affected by that. The vast, by the way, we've said this at every roadshow, and I'll say it here on the podcast. Every one of these things that are in the TA, we asked for. The company didn't come to us and ask. We asked for these. We did months and months of working groups thinking outside the box, because another part of this equation, lots of moving parts, right? Lots of research done to figure out where the system's broken. But anywhere between the time of scheduled departure and 2 to 3 hours roughly there is a really big sticking point. That's where we find a lot of flight signals will become uncovered. And that's where a ton of pilots are getting rerouted. So we said, okay, voluntary airport standby is exactly that, voluntary, right? You can volunteer to do that. And if you do these very short notice flight segments, be prepared you're going to go fly these. It's very lucrative, as we'll talk about, very expensive for the company to use this. But guess what? Now you have one pilot who he or she volunteered to be interrupted, and you'll have theoretically 0 pilots downstream who are now being affected, where right now you have 7 to 9 pilots that are being affected for every one reroute.
Right. Okay. So walk me through, since we're on it, the voluntary airport standby. Somehow the company's going to have to figure out how many airport standbys they want or need or to allow. And so how is that going to happen? And can they opt to not have any voluntary airport standbys?
Yeah.
Is this going to be a SIL situation where it's in the contract, but they don't want to use it?
Sure. First of all, it's voluntary, right? So the company, they can publish these, they can be awarded only. They can't be assigned. So they'll be in PCS and you can be awarded them. You cannot be assigned. It's going to look like a rotation that's in open time that will have different, what your airport standby times will be and things like that. But it can never be assigned. So it can't be assigned to a reserve pilot. It can't be inversely assigned to anybody. It can't be a recovery assignment for a pilot. And it must be in the base that already has that category. So any type of TDY or virtual base concerns, we eliminate it right there. So they can't take a base that doesn't have the 330 and put some voluntary airport standbys there or something like that. So 100% voluntary. Now, can they double negative? Not offer them? Sure. But then you know what we got for it? our entire reroute language is rewritten. So if we said, we're willing to do this because we know that this is problematic for the company, we're trying to solve pilots' problems, meaning that is where a huge percentage of the reroutes come from. If they don't do that, then we got our reroute rules for free.
Right.
And if they continue to reroute like they do today, then it is very expensive for the company, and the pilots would be compensated either at 150% or 200% or both.
Okay. Tell me how a voluntary airport standby is paid.
Voluntary airport standby, there's actually two components to it. There is a ADG component, which is $5.15 currently, that pays the pay credit. And then on top of that, there's 3 hours pay no credit. And again, that goes on top of just about everything else, including reserve guarantee. So a reserve pilot who raises his hand to set a VAS period would have $5.15 that would go towards his reserve guarantee. And then on top of that, he would get 3 hours pay no credit. And the reserve pilot would also get one of his short call obligations satisfied.
Oh, that's important to know. Okay. So the reserve pilot, do you sit a VAS period on an X day, or can it be on an on-call day? How does that work?
Well, if it's on an X day, it would be through an award on a green slip. And that would certainly be paid the same way as green slips are paid today. If he chooses to sit on an on-call day, that would pay pretty much the same as any flying that he would perform on that on-call day, with the exception that the 3 hours is above his reserve guarantee.
And the pilot would do so via a yellow slip if it's on call days. But an important part of this is that's actually going to be a rotation that a reserve pilot can yellow slip. They can never be assigned that.
Right.
And yellow slip.
So reserve pilots say, you know what, I live in base. I don't want to be on short call tomorrow. I'll just go to the airport. No big deal. He puts in for the VAS period. He's awarded that period. That counts for a short call credit. And you get the 3 hours above the guarantee, $5.15 towards your fill up.
Correct. And even if you're used, you still get the 3 hours pay no credit above your reserve guarantee.
Okay.
And if you're used,
What about a regular pilot?
paid the exact same way.
I paid the exact same way.
Obviously, you're doing that on an off day, though.
Right. You would be doing that on an off day. But, that's for the person who is, maybe you're like me, you don't have much going on in your life. You can get off the couch every once in a while and kind of reach periods for a substantial premium.
And the VAS period is 6 hours, right? And that'll be
Correct.
determined by scheduling. Hey, we want coverage between 8 a.m. and 2 p.m. And you can decide if that works for you or not.
That's right. It'll be published in the rotation. So the rotation that's in open time will tell you what that VAS period is. And the scheduled departure of that flight segment must occur. If you're assigned something during that, must occur within that 6 hour window.
Okay. And you must be on the premises of the airport, right? This isn't like a short call where,
Well, it's intentionally ambiguous and undefined, just like a short call is. We're not going to tell a pilot where they need to be. The intent of this is if you read the language on a 23K1, it talks about for a regular pilot, if you report to the airport and your rotation is subsequently canceled, you need to be prepared to depart immediately on any assigned flight. Now, that's intentionally ambiguous, just like short call response time, right? And it was written that way here as well. So we're not going to tell you where you need to be. The TA nor the contractual language will say where you need to be. That's pilot discretion. But if it's like it is now, if it takes too long, or if it's considered to some, it might be a little unreasonable, you're probably going to talk to your chief pilot.
okay, very good. And as far as when a pilot on voluntary airport standby is used, how are we going to know, how are the pilot's going to know that they've been used? Is that going to be in the daily trip coverage, or?
We're still working through these as implementation comes up, right? So these are 50,000 foot concepts.
Okay.
We're going to distill down to the ground level eventually. But the way that we envision them are just like short calls are now. So the actual assignment to short call currently is daily trip coverage, right? But if you're assigned something while you're on there, that's not shown in daily trip coverage. Voluntary airport standby is going to be the same thing. If you get awarded a voluntary airport standby rotation, that will be in daily trip coverage. But if you're assigned something that's on there, it's going to look a lot like a reroute, even though it's not considered a reroute, because you don't get a rotation on a rotation. So just segments are going to be added. So the actual segments that you fly while on a VAS will not be in daily trip coverage. But the award to one of those rotations absolutely will. And a subtle point that Rich hit on that I want to repeat is, since these will be in open time, you can use PCS, but you can also transition to manual coverage, and the steps of coverage apply. So it could go out as a white slip. It could go out as a yellow slip. It could go out as an inverse assignment, a green slip. So they follow the steps of coverage because these are open time rotations.
Okay, this is pretty complex. This is going to take some time to unfurl and kind of marinate, right? But again, let's look in the negotiator's notepad. keep the darts coming, keep the questions coming, but these are improvements to protect quality of life. I think some pilots who enjoy flying premium trips or flying green slips will say, well, this airport standby may impede that, right? That's going to get in my way. Also, some of the rules of reroute where once you hit your base, the remainder of that rotation has to go into open time. High level, 50,000 foot. How do you feel these provisions are going to affect premium trip flying or green slip flying?
Well, very rarely is it going to affect it. So you could probably make an argument that there is a small nuance that it would, but current book, all of those examples you just gave would never go out as a green slip ever, because there's no requirement. I won't go through the math, but just trust me on this. Anything same day and oftentimes next day, any flight segment under current book that becomes uncovered goes into a reroute queue and gets rerouted.
Okay.
The only time it's ever going to go out as premium pay is if it's actually built into a rotation and put into open time. Otherwise, it's never going out as premium pay. So current book, very specific instances, and it's long range stuff out to the middle of tomorrow, for example, are they required to then build it into a rotation, put in open time? Under the TA, every reroute will now be paid premium pay. So reroutes now are not currently paid at premium pay. Those rotations would not go into open time. If you're rerouted under the TA today, for example, those flight segments will now be paid at 150%. In my example, anything tomorrow and beyond on that pilot's original schedule, the TA now requires that the company put that into open time. So guess what? You've actually now increased your chances that someone's going to green slip on that. Under current book, those rules don't exist. Those can go to pilots for today and tomorrow and beyond.
Okay.
So I think that the opportunities for more green slips far eclipses the specific instance where it may actually reduce.
Fair enough. You heard it here. And Shawn Kellett, he's been in scheduling for years and now the chairman of the scheduling committee. And I do trust your math. This guy knows the ins and outs. Speaking of money and open time, premium time, let's talk about these new silver slips. New to me, new to you. Who wants it? Rich?
Yeah, certainly. One of the guidelines that we had going into the negotiations was making premium time available to a broader spectrum of pilots. Certainly with the trip coverage the way it exists today, the only time you see premium time is on same day, next day. And that can often lead to a helmet fire. Some people are out of position. They simply live someplace where they don't have easy access to getting into where the trip starts. They may have childcare issues. They just may simply not want to disrupt their life by sitting available all the time. So what silver slips are is it simply makes premium time available anytime during the PCS run. Just as a quick reminder to all our listeners is that PCS is the automated process that runs, and that runs from the 20th of the month prior up until manual trip coverage begins. And manual trip coverage is when your short notice white slips, your yellow slips, your green slips are all awarded. So what silver slip trips are going to do is they're going to make designated premium trips available to a broader spectrum of pilots who are simply going to be able to view them at open time and raise their hand and say, yes, this is something I'm interested in. And they'll put their award in and they'll be awarded via PCS.
And they have to soak, right? I don't know why we came up with this, but they have to soak in open time for no less than 48 hours before being awarded. And that's just to get everybody essentially the opportunity to see it in open time and put in the slip for it.
You'll see a number of instances where we were very sensitive to certain issues that pop up, and certainly seniority is on the top of that list. And we want to make sure that everybody had the opportunity to take a look at these trips and raise their hand if they want it.
Part of this too is it's a bigger picture of how we're going to improve quality of life. And one of the many areas that we looked at was that there were a lot of pilots being forced into flying that they didn't want to do, and other pilots that actually raised their hand that weren't allowed to fly. For example, yellow slips are a great example, right, Ryan? You put a yellow slip in, but sorry, you're in the wrong days of availability, the wrong raw bucket. Rich doesn't want it. He just wants to sit on his couch, but guess who gets that flying? Not the person that just raised their hand.
Right.
So this is a lot. Make no mistake about this. These silver slips are probably not going to be these beautiful beach layovers with 30-hour layovers. They're probably going to be pretty crummy rotations, right? Something the company is like, okay, we know that these are bad. And again, these are this was our ask. We said, okay, if we make it a little bit more lucrative to the pilots, then maybe a pilot that they wouldn't have before are now going to raise their hand to fly this crummy rotation where there's another pilot that was like, great, I'm going to be stuck with this. And now they're not. So that was another part of this bigger puzzle that we looked at too, is trying to let people sit that want to sit and other people that really want to fly, give them the opportunity to fly.
Okay. And a caveat here is it's subject to the white slip pickup limit. to the pay and credit portion of the silver slip, right? So it's white slip with premium pay attached to it.
Yeah. Our leveling mechanism for these is exactly that.
But you don't have to meet the green slip trigger at this point. So you'd be at 50 hours and put in for this and get it. There you go. Okay.
Exactly right. Now realize the other side of that is if you're going to do that, the more you pick up, right? So in your example, you could pick up another couple, 2-3 days or 4 day or whatever, but you're creeping up closer to the FARs. And we've had a lot of feedback at road shows, and we talk through it and say, yeah, the senior pilots might pick these up if they're in open time, if they really want to fly. I mean, they're lucrative enough, but they're going to be closer to the FARs and maybe now not have the ability to be awarded a 2, 3, or 4 day green slip that now comes open. So sure, the senior pilot might be able to pick up one of these, but now there's a good chance if they do that they're not going to be eligible for green slips. Because the feedback we got was from a lot of junior pilots. Well, great. Now the senior guys are going to get these silver slips and the green slips. And in most cases, realize there's a lot of math that went behind this, a lot of analysis. In most cases, that is not true, unless they're very short trips. If you're going to fill up in silver slips, then there's a good chance that you may not be eligible for many, if any, green slips.
Okay. Hard to conceptualize, but I'll take your word for it at this point. And so if I pick up a silver slip, it's on my line, that premium pay is attached to that. If I decide, what, I don't want to do this and I drop it, it goes back into open time. Is that premium pay still attached to the rotation?
Yeah, it is. In that case, let me say it a little bit differently. Anything that's in open time, the company has the wherewithal to turn premium. It's a light switch, so they can turn premium pay on or off. And we haven't exactly whittled down to what that's going to look like as far as how we will know what the pay on that, if that's a premium rotation or not. It'll be intuitive once we get there and program it. But the company has the ability to turn it on and off. But what they can't do is if it was awarded to Ryan as a premium pay silver slip, they can't, when it's on your line, they go, never mind.
Oh,
okay.
Sure.
So they can't take that premium pay off. And you don't get just like green slips, you don't get the premium pay unless you fly it.
Right. Okay. And now I cannot swap with the pot or give it to a buddy.
That's correct. As I mentioned before, seniority was very important to us when we were looking at all these different new options. And certainly the trip parking issue came in where, Ryan, you're very senior, so you pick up a silver slip and then you swap it to a friend of yours who is in the bottom of the category.
Sure.
That is something we want to avoid.
Okay. So we've got the negotiator here and the chairman of the scheduling committee. Silver slips alone, thumbs up, thumbs sideways, or thumbs down. Like, where do we sit with this? This is weird.
Well, I mean, Shawn's opinion only, I think it's, again, we asked for this, right? This is the outside the box thinking that we went to, and I think it's a great idea. It's a great idea to help pilots that may be on the fence to fly, they're going to fly, and to keep other pilots who don't want to fly from being forced on a trip. And don't forget also, conceptually, when it goes to manual trip coverage, these silver slips lose their premium value, but then these same silver slip rotations, if they're not picked up, can go right back out as a green slip.
Okay. That's good to know.
And I would say certainly it's going to open up premium time to a much broader spectrum of pilots. If you have a difficult commute, if you just simply need to plan your life just a little bit better than kind of the hair on fire episodes that happen with the green slip assignments, you can say, hey, the wife is out of town and the cats are boarded. I can go and fly this trip, a couple of weeks from now. It gives you a much more stable schedule rather than always this last minute drama that seems to occur.
Okay. Very good. Speaking of planning out your life, so now there's premium rotations awarded via PBS. So now you're in your pre-month bid, you're putting in your stuff. Now we have premium rotations in the bid packages?
That's correct. So the company will designate certain rotations that will pay a premium pay. And there's no kidding around about this. This is going to be during the days that would normally be unstacked at PBS.
So we're talking like holidays, Christmas, Super Bowl Sunday,
weekends. Certain weekends are very high profile. And this is a way to mitigate that. And again, it's, as Shawn has said, the carrot, not the stick. Rather than pilots getting unstacked on these days, which is one that they don't want to do.
Yeah, unstacking is the purple on the wide report
Right,
that you did not want.
Yeah, it's bad. That's the one word description. This is encouraging pilots who would, have more flexibility, who want to go fly. It gives them an opportunity to raise their hand and say, yes, I'm willing to fly over these time periods. And for every pilot who does that, there's one pilot less that is forced into doing flying on a day they don't want to do it.
Now, some may say, well, if we're doing these silver slips on top of the premium in PBS, again, this is less green slips at the last moment. Some people enjoy that. But what I'm hearing from the two of you is that these are actually kind of compounding. These are opening up opportunities to other pilots. They're helping quality of life of the majority of pilots. And theoretically, the green slip levels probably won't change.
Yeah, I'm going to answer that in a much more verbose way, but I'll try to keep it short. 1,300 grains of duty period is not normal, however you define normal, right? There was a very clear correlation that sometime in 2014, 2015, I think everybody would agree when the rotation started to become really bad. Premium flying went way, right? There's a direct correlation to quality of life decreasing and premium pay increasing. No doubt about it. It's an empirical correlation. We do have some that would love to see that premium flying stay high, but quality of life also go up to meet that, right? But that's not reality. There has to be some type of balance, which when you do anything good to the contract by either improving the quality of life, however you define that, whether that's better work rules, shorter duty days, less segments, longer layovers, however you're going to define that. Well, guess what that's going to do? That's going to decrease the overall premium flying. If you add staffing to a category, guess what? That improves the staffing in that category, and you're going to decrease the overall premium flying in that category, which is where we didn't go into this looking to decrease green slips. We went into this very clearly. The pilot group said, we want a better quality of life. A result of that, secondary, tertiary results will be decreased premium flying, which is exactly what we want, right? We want less block hours per pilot per day, per month, per year. We want better staffing. We want better work rules, and all of that is going to create a better balance. So a result of that will overall reduce premium flying. But I'm not sure we had anybody strenuously object during any of the road shows. Once we explained it that way, everybody's nodding. They go, yeah, that makes sense. We want healthier staffing. We want better work days. Yeah. And as a result of that, it's going to bring the premium flying down.
Okay.
And I would simply add with the PBS premium rotations, those trips, or a good number of those trips that are stacked up on those days, they would have been forced onto somebody's schedule.
That's
zero.
That's going to be the most junior pilot. So somebody might as well get a bang for it instead of somebody getting forced into it. So maybe if we look at it like help your buddy who doesn't want to be the junior person flying a trip on Christmas. This is a premium trip. They'll fly some other trip on Christmas, but it won't be this one.
And the important takeaway there is once PBS concludes and all the schedule has been done and they've been awarded, those trips, if they're not awarded, they fall back into open time and they go back to their normal day. And so the company has one opportunity to award those trips at 150% during the PBS process. Once that's completed, if they want those trips filled, they have to either go through PCS and the white slip process, or they have to go through trip filling. The company may designate them as silver slips, but if those trips go out at premium after PBS, they can only go out at 200%.
Okay. Candid answers. I appreciate that. Since we're talking about PBS, so now we're in the normal PBS line construction window. It's gone from 7.5 hours up to plus or minus 10 hours of the ALV. So now you're still in your pre-month bid. What's up with that?
There's a little bit of technical wonkery that goes into this. And one of the complaints that we've gotten over the years is the line construction window is too confining, especially for those categories that have long rotations. These are typically your wide body categories. One trip too short is too short. One trip too much is too many. And they wind up in the reduced line, which people don't necessarily enjoy. And so this becomes a tricky problem because you want to increase the line construction flexibility without giving away productivity and without taking credit away from pilots. And so how we tackled this was kind of multi-pronged. We did expand the line construction window, so it'll now be plus or minus 10 hours around the ALB versus 7.5 hours. But we protected the top end by using the existing 7.5 hour cap, which is 91.5 or 92.5 hours, depending if you're on a narrow body or a wide body. So as the ALB increases, that the plus side will shrink in conjunction with that cap. On the minus side, certainly, you could wind up less than 65 hours with a line construction window minus 10. We wanted to protect those pilots too. So even if you were awarded a line that is less than 65 hours, you'll still receive the full line guarantee of 65 hours. So we've protected it on the bottom end.
Okay. And that's a great point. So if you were awarded the line where, 62 hours, you're going to be paid for 65. What if you pick up another trip on top of that? Is that 3 hour difference technically free?
Yeah, it'll be offset.
Offset by it. Okay. So something to think about. Do you want to fly 62 hours and get 3 hours for quote free? Or do you want to pick up that extra trip and it'll absorb it there?
Yeah. The other end of that, though, let's say you're at, in your example, 62 hours, line awarded at 62, you're paid at 65, and you then subsequently drop the rotation. That rotation deficit will be based off the 65 hours, not your 62. So it works to your advantage on the other side.
Okay.
And we have a schedule alert that's going to come out that will explain all of this, because implementation on this is, I think, in April. It's coming up
Pretty soon.
Yeah. And that's good to know, because implementation is rolling throughout the next couple of months. August is a big month of the start of implementation for certain things. April is another big month. So you can look for more podcasts, scheduling alerts, more negotiators, notepads coming out on that. So you're not going to be left out to dry. You'll be notified of, hey, next month, this is going to be implemented. Let's take a break here. And when we come back, let's talk about reserve improvements, because this is near and dear to my heart, but there's a lot of changes and improvements, certainly with the reserve stuff.
Engage Podcast wants to hear from you. Send us your questions through the MEC DART system at dart.alpha.org. You have questions, we want answers. You're listening to Engage, the podcast for Delta pilots.